Values are what can make or break a watercolor painting. There are many ways to begin a realistic flower, but for this Amaryllis, starting with the values gives us a strong foundation and a clear path forward, especially if we want to preserve light and crisp detail later on. Welcome to Sunlit Brushstrokes. I'm Jessica, and in today's video, I'll walk you through the early stages of this painting, from the first washes to establishing soft value transition, so the flower already feels believable before we move into detail next time. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so for supplies today, I have traced my outline onto Arches 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I did trace it onto the smooth side so that I can achieve a little more detail, but you can trace it onto whichever side you prefer working. And you will notice with the outline, I did not get every single little line. I've traced some of them as a guideline for myself, but I'm gonna be lifting some of them off a little bit so they're not quite as bold, because this pink is so soft that I don't want to have the outline, coming through. So I'm gonna just lift it a little bit with my kneadable eraser. And I would just suggest going with as many little lines or creases and folds as you need to feel comfortable with your painting process, but you don't need them all. I didn't even trace all of them from the original photo, so just keep that in mind. We're just going to try and follow the general direction. So once I've got that light enough, I'm going to start by applying a wet on wet wash. That's what I like to start with. I do have my Graham watercolor. That's what I use, but you can use whatever brand you want. This is my quinacridone rose. My hands are yellow deep. You can see my palettes are very dirty. And my phthalo blue, and those are the three colors I mix pretty much everything else with. Occasionally I'll throw a couple other colors into my mixtures, but for the most part I work with those primaries. And then I have several different sizes of round brushes. I have a few Artegria round brushes, as well as some Simply Simmons, and these are really nice. They're a little firmer, but they're helpful for water control. And if you want more water, it can be helpful to have some of these softer brushes. But you'll see as I kind of change things up as I go through my painting. I also have some water here and some paper towel for blotting my brush. The first thing I notice when I look at my reference photo is those beautiful pink lines, the creases, folds, but these are actually patterns right on the Amaryllis. However, I want to start by going lighter first. And so I try and think of the painting kind of in layers. I like to start wet on wet. And so I'm going to be wetting my flower. And when I look at this flower and you look, say, in the reference photo, you can tell that this petal here is behind this one. And part of what sets them apart is that there's a little more darkness in the back one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in first and put kind of like a light shadow color in several places of this flower, just so that we can kind of get those shadow colors in, and then we'll come back and do the fun details. Now, I'm going to actually do these three petals because they're not really touching each other too much, so they won't bleed. And then these three petals are also not touching each other. We'll do them after, and so that we can kind of control our water just in this first layer. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of, you could mask these details in the stamen and all that. I'm just going to go ahead and paint around them because they're kind of almost like they're in a single clump together. So I think I can get away with just painting around them. But masking fluid can be really helpful for making that process easier if you don't want to have to work around those small details. So basically I've got these three petals wet. Then I'm going to come in, I have a kind of a purpley color mixed up in my palette here. Would have been made from phthalo blue, quinacridone rose with a very small amount of yellow to dull things down. It's kind of a bluish color. Now the reference photo, actually, you know what, I might even pull a little more red into it. The reference photo, if you look at it, does seem to be kind of almost gray in the shadows, but I like a little bit more color in my shadows. So that's where I'm going to start with a little bit more of a purple color. And I'm going to just look at my photo and figure out where I see that color. I'll just show you on a scrap of paper what my shadow color kind of looks like. Something like that. You can definitely go more gray if you prefer. And I'm going to go ahead and start over here, furthest away from me, and I'm just going to like tap my brush off a bit on my paper towel so it's not too wet. My paper's been sitting for just a little minute, and so things aren't super wet either in my paper. And I'm going to look at my reference photo and try and follow the direction of the creases and the folds that I do see, and try and kind of pay attention to where I see a little bit more of like almost like a faint hint of like almost like a purple undertone. It's really hard to see it on this petal. There really isn't a whole lot of a purple undertone there, but it's not what I would consider pure white either. So I'm gonna go ahead, I've got a second brush. So this is the one that had paint. This one here just has water, slightly bigger. It's a number 8. This one was a 6. Doesn't matter exactly what size you use. Just use what's comfortable for you. I'm just gonna blend those around. I'm not getting a lot of creases and folds in this first layer, but I still kind of follow that general movement as I apply my paint. So I'm gonna lay that down. Now this one's starting to dry out a little more. I can already kind of tell the paper's losing its shine, so we'll see how this works. Yeah, it's definitely holding its shape more, getting a little more detail. You can see I'm not coming quite to the edge. To me, the edge is a little lighter. It's got a light ruffle on the edge. So I'm just gonna lay that in. And I feel like there's a little bit more shadow here. You can definitely see things are drying, and so that's why the details are needing to be blended out more with my second brush, which has the water on it. So let's come down here a little bit. And again, I'm gonna soften it with this brush with only water on it, because you can see things were maintaining a little more of a crisp edge, and I didn't want that yet. We will get that later. So I'm gonna come in here now. You know what? Because I can tell this is already getting quite dry, I'm just gonna come back in and apply some more water. I could have used either of the brushes. This one is softer, it holds more water, and so I'm just gonna allow this to have a little bit more water on here, and we'll see how it goes. I want a slight bit more detail, so maybe I should have used a firmer brush, but let's see. I'm just gonna come in here, and I don't have a whole lot of paint left on here, but you can see I'm actually maintaining those little folds a little bit more, creases, folds, details, and I'm happier with it right now because this petal to me has a lot more kind of, do you almost see the dark details? You can see creases and folds that aren't pink. And so it's kind of like the more of a shadow on a white flower. So we're almost working, ooh, okay, that's really strong. I'm gonna blend that out a bit. So you can see we're almost working as if this is a white flower right here. A little bit of a pink undertone to it. There's some nice shadow under here. And again, I'm kind of still paying attention to the creases, the folds, like the direction that they're running, because you can see that very clearly on this petal. Now I'm going to soften it with my brush that just has water on it, because these are almost a little too dark. So I'm just kind of lightening, lifting it a little bit as I do this, and just softening these so they're not quite as harsh. But you can see it's definitely more detail than, say, what I got on this one. All right, so then what I'm gonna do is give this a really quick dry with the hair dryer. Things are just, they're almost dry enough, but not quite, that I want them fully dry before I come and do these other petals. So I'm gonna dry it quick and then I'll be back. Then I'll go ahead and repeat this on these 3 petals. Now, if you're wondering how to decide which petals to start with, I actually didn't think too hard about it. I just picked 3 that weren't really touching and I went with it. But there's no reason you couldn't have done it the other way around. So I'm just gonna go ahead and wet them all. I'll speed the camera up as I do it. One thing you want to avoid wetting is this little area that's a little bit light, like a white strip here. I got a bit of water on it, so I'll probably come and do that petal at the end, but just be aware of that. You don't want to have that little shape to be wet. Okay, so we're gonna repeat these steps, and this time I'm gonna be able to go a little tiny bit darker because I can see that there's a little bit of darkness along here. Now, it's not overly purple in the photo, I will admit, but it's definitely, this petal definitely looks like it's behind these 2. And the way you can make it look like that is to darken the area where the edges are meeting. So this is the area where the edges are meeting, the front and the back petal. The front petal's against the back petal, and so I'm darkening there. And then I'm just gonna pull this upwards with my water brush. So I put that purple on there with the paintbrush, but they're both paintbrushes, but I call the one that's just got water on it my water brush. Okay, so we're gonna go like so. I don't wanna have a whole lot down here because you can see there's a little hint of green there. We're gonna deal with that later. And I feel like my mixture is actually getting a little bit more purpley or like bluey purple. So I'm gonna just tap a little more the red into it. And so I get more of a blend, a nice blend of purple. Now this is very concentrated, so I'm adding water to my brush as I paint because I don't want it to be incredibly dark. I'm also tapping off my brush. And you can always bring the water over. You can see my water over here. You can always tap that off a little bit too, like dip in your water and tap it off if you're too dark. So I'm gonna come up here because I'm feeling like there's quite I don't know, just a deep, dark kind of feel to this petal. I know they're all light, but compared to these ones, this one up here does feel dark to me. So I'll put that color on in a few spots, and the amount of detail that remains there does have to do with how wet or dry the paper is. It's kind of damp, and we're going to purposely aim for more dampness later. For now, I'm using my water brush and kind of blending these out a bit. I don't want the detail to be too stark. This is just kind of that underneath layer where we get that initial kind of shadow happening. And I like to get it on first because it actually is, even though it's shadow, it's a really light layer. These aren't super dark shadows because they're on a light flower. Now you can see I got more of a purple bluey purple undertone. That's because I dipped almost more to the side of my palette that had a little bit more of the bluey purple. So I've got a couple colors going here. Might even do that a little bit on this side for harmony, but I also, again, I really feel like I'm seeing a darker shadow there. So let's go and do this one. I'm going to apply a little more water because I can see it's drying out. You could just do this one at a time, considering that's what I'm having to almost do. Not working fast enough. So then what I'm going to do is go ahead and put this color, maybe a little more on the blue side this time, along here where you can really see we have that nice light area, almost like a white edge where it's folded. You want to leave that folded edge lighter because it's like it's its own shape. And then we're going to come in here and darken the edge of that, but then blend it out because it's definitely not that harsh. So I'll just put a little more water on there, blend it out. And I don't want a ton of the shadow coming in here because we're going to get a little green later. So we don't want a ton of the bluey pink shadow. Just kind of tapping it around, tapping some water in there and kind of letting it kind of just blend a little better. And then I'll put a little more of the dark here. And again, I feel like there's some nice kind of linear movement happening here. And so I'm still trying to achieve that in this first layer. Got a little less paint on my brush, it's working better. And I'll just darken a little bit along this edge again because edges are meeting here and it will help push the back petal visually back. Just tap that a little bit, make sure I'm happy with it. And then we're gonna come over here and do this last one. Try to be careful. I'm getting a little sloppy, I feel like. Okay. Now it wouldn't matter as much if I get the shadow color in here where it's so dark because it's almost like a super dark green. So it doesn't really matter as much if I get some blues in there. But let's just start down here. You can see the shadows, I think almost easier on this particular petal. So I'm gonna do this and you can see using the tip of my brush, and it happens to not be quite as wet here. That wasn't planned. I did have the firmer brush as I wet that, so it kept it from getting as wet. If it was bleeding around more, I wouldn't have worried too much, but it's really nice. I'm happy that it's staying because this does have more visible detail in those kind of purpley colors, doesn't it? So if you find it's bleeding around more than you'd like it to, it just means you need to let your paper dry for a few more minutes or even a few seconds, depending on your environment, and you'll be able to achieve a little more detail. So it's about the wetness and dryness of your paper. Too wet or very wet, you'll get softer, more diffused lines. And if you want to have a little more hard lines or a little bit more detailed lines, maybe you would even say, you're gonna want to let your paper dry a bit so that it's almost like damp. And we will be doing that more intentionally, as I said, as we carry on here. I'm gonna, don't think I want it that purple. It's getting almost too purple in there. We do want to have a little bit of that greeny color show. So let's lift it a little bit with this brush and then tap off the excess onto my paper towel. Okay, I see more darks right here. It's just kind of more diffused. I'm just gonna tap it a little bit and get that kind of nice and soft. And go like so. Now I'm just gonna put a little bit of shadow into these shapes here. I really liked having this back flower here. I felt like it added to the composition. It anchors our flower to the edge of the painting. So it helps it just be more pleasing visually. So I'm gonna just wet the whole thing. We're gonna get detail on it later, not a ton. It's not the focal point of the painting, so we don't wanna do anything major, but I'm gonna tap some darkness into here, just like so, and blend that around. And usually, yes, I don't get this dark at the beginning of the painting, but just figure, you know what? We might as well get some nice dark shadows just back there. Kind of push that back. And then I'll use water and just blend it around. I just want really soft, basically just a soft shadow at the back. And you can see I've got kind of a ruffled edge here. You just do that by kind of like tapping or like jiggling your brush as you come along the edge of your petal. You'll be able to get a kind of more of a natural looking petal edge, if that makes sense. So just go ahead, just kind of blend that around. Like I say, everything just seems dark in here, so I'm just letting it be dark. And then we'll get some color on there on top, like to make it look more pinky and whatever after. So nothing too fancy here. All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and dry everything. If you're enjoying today's video, I would love to invite you to join my free newsletter. In it, you'll find creative inspiration and be the first to know about new tutorials, classes, and workshops. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can find a link in the description below. Now let's get back to painting. I'm back from drying it, and as I was drying it, I was kind of looking at it and realized I could have gone a little darker here. You can almost probably, maybe you already caught me, but there's almost a shadow in here that's a bit darker that helps push this petal behind the one that's above it. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and the beauty of watercolor paper, that's a quality like Arches cold press, is that you can just come back on, wet it again, and then drop your shadow colors that you didn't get on there the first time on there. Now, I will say if you use the rougher side of the paper, you have even more forgiveness this way. I feel like the smoother side sometimes will, like once you get like a lot of layers, you can sometimes have lifting. Nothing serious and nothing bad with something like this. This is very light still. We're still working in our light shapes, but I'll just mention that. So just tapping that on. So all I did is wet it, tapped on some shadow. Now we could go ahead and dry it after we've done that, but because we're gonna work kind of like one petal at a time here, we can just let that one air dry, I think, as we start working on these other petals. Now to decide what color to go next, I actually think this is a little bit of a, I was kind of going back and forth. Do I go with the pinks next or the greens? I decided because there's not a lot of greens, I will do them next, and I'll just be careful as I go into my pinks. Pink and green are across the color wheel from each other, which can make it so that they can create quite a muddy color if you're not careful when the two of them interact. So it makes it a little bit more challenging to decide which color to go. I don't really think there's a right or a wrong way to go with that here, but I made the decision to go with green. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I have my yellow here in my palette. And I think what I'm gonna do, is this is messy, if you wanna just mix something up in a palette where you've got space, do so. I'm just gonna take some of my green here that I have. It's kind of a nice medium green. And I'm gonna mix it into my yellow and just get a nice kind of a limey color. So just do what you wanna do for mixing yourself up a green. This would have, hence a yellow deep, phthalo blue, and a very, very small amount of quinacridone rose. It's just kind of the colors I work with. So I pretty much can tell you that's what this is. So we've got this color. It's very deep. I'm going to be diluting it. You can see that's kind of the color I've got here. I will be adding a little more water because I can tell it's way too concentrated right now. So let's go ahead. I might just go ahead and just reapply a little more water here. Make sure I'm nice and wet. And might even come where I've got a little bit more yellow. So it's a little bit more limey. And I'm gonna just drop that color into here. So just like you can see, I've just wet the one petal and it's just kind of blooming out into the rest of the petal. And I'm gonna wanna be careful how much that green moves around. Okay, I think I do need a little more of the greenish color, not just the yellowy color. Okay, I'm gonna tap that off and control it. I'm gonna be doing this on all of the petals. And I'm mainly happy with the amount of bleed. I feel like I could control it just a little bit right here. I feel like maybe it's coming a little further than I want it to. So I'm just using a clean, kind of damp brush. I call it a thirsty brush because it's, I wash it and dry it on my paper towel and then come back in, just so that I kind of pull that green back into here a little bit. That green is almost too neutral. You know what? It's got maybe a little more red than you might like. You might want your green a little more vibrant. You can go with that. I even put a little bit more of this green here. This green here is a little less olivey, so I think I'm going to go with it. Because I feel like it actually does have more of a greenish, like I've got too much yellow in here, don't I? Now this is going to be strong. You could definitely mix yourself a different color in your palette. Just take a little more time when you're mixing your green to make sure you've got something you're happy with. You'll be fine. I just think, you know what? I think I'm almost too yellow and almost too limey, like a little bit of like a little bit muddy. So that's because of the green that I picked up. But I'm like, you know what? I see more of just a plain vibrant green in the middle of here. And then I'm just controlling the water by using my thirsty brush and just kind of pushing around and getting a little bit tight. So I'll move on here before I keep getting too tight. So I'm going to go ahead and wet this petal. Now I'm going to wet this section here at the kind of more at the base, and try not to wet the petal that's touching it. I'm going to come in. I know there's some green on the little stamen, but I'm not going to get them right now. I'm just going to come in here and do the green that I see just in the center. You know what I'm going to do actually is, because I'm switching over to a more whatever, this green here has a little too much of that olivey look to it. I'm just going to actually tap it out of my palette. It's a little bit wild, but I'm going to just add more water and more of this green because it's got a little less red in it, and I think I'll be happier. Yeah, you can already tell that's going to be better, right? Okay, I'm going to tap that in. Now I've got the bigger brush, but that's okay. I'll just use it for now. Tap it in around here. It wouldn't matter too badly if they touch, but it could create a little bloom, so I'm going to try and keep it from touching. I'm going to be way darker in here later. This is just kind of my initial coat of green, and I might even come in with a bit more darkness. We'll see. Should we go a little bit in here right now? We could, but we will do the stamen details and all that later, so not worrying too much right now. I do like that color better, I will say that, but I will put a little of this, a little bit more of an olivey color just at the base, because I do feel like things are kind of a little bit more, I gotta reconstitute that a bit. Anyway, sorry, I feel like things do get a little dark in here. I might have to go with a more olivey green yet. That's not quite olivey enough. I'll just come and tap a little bit of this. I've got like a burgundy color here. I'm just gonna make like almost a brown color on my palette and just stick a little bit just at the very, very, very base of this. And then I'll use a little water and blend it around. We could do that as a second layer if we wanted to, but I figured, you know what, if we can get more done in this layer, let's do it. So just put a little more, tap a little more of this other green, help it blend. So sometimes you can tap with another color rather than just water. You can blend with water, but you can also use your other colors. I think I'm okay with that. It's helped it. So I'm just going to leave it like so for now, and I will come in and do some more. Well, let's put a little touch of yellow into this green. Just drop a little bit. Okay, good enough for that. I'm going to do the one right beside it because there's almost like a little bit of a gap here in some places. Okay, let's go back to water, not yellow paint. Just going to wet this shape, bring it into where I've got that yellow paint. I'll just blend the water outwards. You probably could get away with not even wetting the whole petal, but I'm going to do that quickly here. And then come in with that greenish color again. So I can tell I've got the more muddy green on my palette or on my brush right now. So just let that be. It's quite dry at the base. And I'm going to come tap this nicer, brighter green, kind of like in the intermediate area between the dark area and the light area. Just a little bit. This particular petal here does not have that much green on it. So maybe something like that. All right, so while that is drying, I think I could actually I'm gonna just create a little bit of a soft edge. I don't know, maybe we'll just keep it simple and let that be a hard edge for now. We can soften it later because we could get some blooms happening if we mess at it right now. So finally, I'm gonna just come in here. I'm gonna not come to the edges of either of these. So if you'd rather wait till they're dry, you could, but I'm gonna just go ahead. This is usually my paintbrush here, the smaller one, but that's okay. I'm just gonna use it and put some water on here. And there's really not that much green, so I'm just going to tap a little bit of it kind of down here. Might even take a little bit of green from here. I feel like I'm getting too yellow for this one. Just mix a little bit more there, tap it off, and just put a little bit kind of at the base here. I touched. I think it's going to be okay. They're not too wet. Okay, let's just guide that around. Maybe kind of just soften the edges of it a little bit with my water. Not really loving it. I could come in and do that one after, whenever the other things are dry, and then I could come a little closer. I feel like I could get away with it. Just want to get this kind of more or less filled in. Just do a little bit more. And I'm just using some water, just so I don't get any kind of weird edges happening, because I feel like maybe things are drying unevenly right now. Now I'm just gonna let this dry for a quick minute before I add my greens, because if things aren't 100% dry, we could have some bleeding happening. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and repeat that, just using the same concept. So just speed things up as I wet these two shapes. I'm just gonna wet the first one and tap the smallest amount of green down here. I feel like I've kind of lost some of the detail of the petal here, but that's okay. I'm just gonna just tap a small amount. There's hardly any green on this one that's visible. Some of it's kind of under here, and I can kind of separate that shape if I wanted to. If I want to be really persnickety, I could do this. You can kind of see it's actually like a separate, it's part of this one. It's kind of in here. By coming in here with a second layer, just coming on here with just a little bit of that green, kind of created that look. Okay, and I can actually kind of, again, it's getting really detailed and I want it to be a little more simplified today, but you could kind of, you can see how that petal kind of has this little interesting shape there. You could kind of dig into it like this. Again, that's just a nice little detail, not 100% necessary, but it does kind of give some character to the flower. But let's just quickly wet this. Now I'm not going to wet where I've just touched right there. I'm just going to wet this area here. So I'm going to just wet part of the petal. So this area here is dry still. And then I'm going to come in here. And I don't want much of this green at all. You can kind of see it's a little bit just along the edge here, like hardly any at all. So drop that on there and then just gently soften, just like so. All right, now since I have the green going and everything is dry around it, I could go ahead and just put like a base coat of green over here if I wanted to. So why don't we? We will get some other darker colors going later on this one as well. But I'm just gonna wet this whole bud and just do kind of like a base coat of green. So not the final layers. Now you can see what I picked up was quite yellowy. I'm gonna come over here and pick up a little more green, add to it, Again, I'm just kind of working with what's on my palette. Now this is way more vibrant than you can see in the photo. We could make a dull color right now, or we can just get this vibrant color on here. And because I'm going to be coming in and doing some shadow colors after, we can get those shadow colors on kind of in a bit. So we could just start with this vibrant green as like a base coat. And I'm just going to use a wet brush and just kind of get just almost like a soft color here with just my water, letting it bleed into here and kind of controlling this kind of interesting squiggly line here. Kind of like this, because you can see one side is definitely lighter, and I might even lift a little bit on this side. Just going to guide that around because I can feel like it's drawing funny, so I want to just guide it to make sure I'm happy with the way the strokes are looking, or so that I have it smooth rather. Don't really want a lot of detail yet, but if I get any, I want that to move in the direction of the creases and folds, kind of like this. So if you have a damp brush or even a thirsty brush, you can start creating some of those. I actually kind of like that. So wasn't in my plan, but there we go, it's there. I might even put a little hint of green since we can right here. So I'm just going to wet this one petal here. I don't really see much for green on those other petals, so I'm going to just ignore them for now and just put a hint of green here. And it's kind of about like there, right? If you look in the reference photo, you can kind of see that hint of green. Not a lot of it. This is way bright, but like I say, I will be coming in with some more coats of paint, and I may not worry about getting it as dark as the reference is either, because we're not going to do the dark background. Okay, then let's just since we've got this on our brush, let's just go in straight with the green. Do a little more dark green here and water, and just get this. I'm just going wet on dry right now, so I haven't wet that shape first. I'm just coming in straight with the paint. Now we could go ahead and dry everything with the hair dryer, or I could come and do some details on these little stamen here. Why don't we do those details since we can? Just be careful because you don't want to dip into any of the wet paint. You can dry it before you do this. I'm just going to use a little bit of this purpley color that I used before, so I don't want very much on my brush, very, very little. It's mostly water on my brush. And I'm just coming on in between these shapes so that I get some differentiation between these little stamen shaped things here. Whoops, too much. You can see how dark that is. I'm just going to tap a little more water onto my brush. And I just want to basically do the negative shapes, if you will, the shapes that are between all these little stamen. Okay, that's too dark, so just tap it out with my water brush a little bit. I can carry that color on a little bit on the other side, like that, and then just soften it. Getting really persnickety right now, but I'm liking these details. I just paused the video to look up what these longer parts are on the stamen. They're actually called the filament, so that's what those long parts are, if we want to be a little more scientific. Okay, I see a little bit of darkness kind of between here. And okay, getting too dark again. And then there is some kind of between some of these shapes. Oh, I don't want to get that one long one covered in paint. I'm kind of slopping a little bit. Oh well, I was trying to do a little bit of negative shape painting there, and I'm just going to blend it out because I am not quite liking, I got a little sloppy. But that's okay. We're going to come in and get things more refined after. So this is at a perfect stage to let things dry, and this Amaryllis is going to be ready for us to add those gorgeous pink details next week. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you'll know when this video comes out. And until then, I hope this video has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.